Hi, and welcome back to my continuing series of making a jointed fur teddy bear. My name is Betty, and this is episode 8. In this episode, we're going to be covering the construction of Henry's head. Okay, I just want to talk a moment about the ears and the direction of the fur. This is going to be the front of his ear, and you'll see that the fur is going up. You want to think of it as a natural hairline. And this is the back of his ear, and you'll see that the fur is going down. So when we sew them, the front will have the fur going up, and it will go over, and the fur will be going down in the back. You'll see that I've cut out the muslin backing for each half of the ear. This is the front of the ear. The fur is going up. So we're going to put the backing on here. And the back of the ear, the fur is going down. And we're going to put the muslin backing here. Now we're going to put the two pieces together. And again, when we pin them together, we try to get as much of the fur as possible into the seam allowance. Okay, you see that this is pinned all the way around. And this is the opening at the bottom. So we're just going to sew from this end across the top into the other end and leave the bottom open, and this is where we will turn the bear's ear right side out. Okay, we're just going to start sewing the bear's ear, and remember we have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Going to back tack here because there will be some stress when we turn the bear's ear right side out. Now we've stitched it, and I'm going to do the same to the other ear, and then what we're going to do is cut V notches all around here so that we can turn the ear right side out and there aren't any wrinkles in it. Okay, I'm going to cut the V notches in the ear so that we can relieve some of the tension on this. Okay, we're ready to turn the ear right side out. You want to be careful not to poke holes in the ear. This is the front because the hair is going up, and this is the back because the hair is going down. Okay, I have this little brush. You can use I guess in the pet supply department of your supermarket or at a pet store, you can get one of these little brushes. And this is what I use to comb out my furs. And what you want to do is just to try to get that fur blended in where your seam allowance is, or where your seam is, so that there's not a definite line of demarcation. And you just want to blend it in from the front to the back. Let's see how this looks. Okay, we're ready to start sewing the head pieces together. And this is the right piece, right half. This is the left half. And then this is the strip that goes from the nose across the top and down to the back. So this is going to take some time in pinning this together. So I'm going to work on this, and then there's a special way that we want to stitch this up after it's all pinned together, and I'll talk about that once we're ready to stitch. Now what we want to do on the front of the nose, I try to find the halfway point, the middle, and I put just a little notch in the front. And we're going to match this up to the front of the bear piece. So what we're going to do is we sew the bottom part first, from the neck up to the tip of the nose. Then, after that's stitched up, then we will put the top center piece on. So again, we're going to match up our seam, our points together here, and we're going to try to put as much of the fur as possible in that seam allowance. What I do is I usually put a pin at the bottom, and I put a pin at the tip of the nose. This way, when you're finished sewing, it will be even at the end. You won't have one piece higher than the other. You'll have them both square on. I usually start sewing from the top of the nose around to the bottom. And again, we have our 1/4 inch seam allowance. And as always, we're going to back tack because this is a stress point. We want to make sure that it's not going to come undone. Okay, again, we're going to cut our V notches in here where the curves are so that we'll have a nice smooth curve without any bumps in it when we turn it right side out. Okay, now when we turn it right side out, you'll see that this is the bottom part where his mouth will be, and it has a nice curve to it. You'll also notice that the fur is going from the front to the back, and also on this side. Now we're ready to pin the center of the head onto the main part of the head. Again, as I've shown you, I put a little notch. This is the top of the snout. Put a little notch on the fur and a little notch on the muslin. I'll put a little pin in here, and we're going to match this up to this center seam. Okay, again, what I usually do is I take the bottom part, the very back side of the head, and I match it up to the body or the back of the head on the bear. And pin this. Again, we try to get as much of the fur inside the seam allowance as possible. Okay, as you can see, I have pinned the top portion of the bear's head to the side. Now I'm going to be sewing on the underside because I'm going to be sewing from the front of the nose, center section of the bear's mouth, the front to the back. And the pins are inserted on the back side so that I can stitch here. By inserting the pins on the back side or the top side of the head, it helps me to ease in all of this bulk and to give the curve. I've also put a few notches in here just so that the pattern or the fabric will bend a little bit as I'm sewing. Okay, I'm going to start sewing. Okay, this is the center seam, and what I'm going to do is back tack this as always and do the 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm leaving the pins in here because I don't want the fur or the fabric to shift. Okay, as you can see, half of it is stitched. Now I'm going to pin the other half, and I will stitch that, and then we'll continue on. Here we have the other half of the bear's head pinned together. Now the pins are on the underside because I'm going to stitch on the top side. And I've put a couple of notches in here so that the fabric will give a little bit when I'm stitching. So here we go. Okay, we have the head completely stitched, and I've put my V notches, as you can see, pretty much all the way down the back of the head. And now it's ready to turn. So you just gently start turning it right side out. And I use my stuffing tool, which you'll be able to buy one of these on the internet website that I'm going to give you. And obviously we have to brush it a little bit to blend in these stitching lines. This completes the stitching, where we're using the sewing machine. And what we'll be doing now is hand stitching the ears to the bear's head. And this will be coming up on our next episode of we will include the stitching of the ears and the stuffing of the head.